Hello, this is Super, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of a movement tutorial in Quake Champions and try to get down to business when it comes to these type of tutorials because everything has its own substance, but it doesn't really explain everything, or it doesn't explain everything well. And I want to try to get players to not only kind of get the concept, but understand how the physics works, especially after practicing. The best way to learn how to strafe jump is to watch it, then do it, then watch it, then do it. And depending on the type of player you are, you'd have to develop those motor skills to really get the hang of pressing the right keys at the right time. For me, I picked it up quite easily because I came from Team Fortress 2, where I spent dozens upon dozens of hours learning how to rocket jump. And rocket jumping in that game is difficult, especially if you're doing jump maps and getting into the nitty-gritty and everything and how air control works and all that stuff. And so I developed those motor skills quite early, and so playing Quake, starting from last year during the closed beta, I picked it up fairly quickly, and I'm kind of glad I did, because it helped me get fairly good at this game quite quickly. And movement's key. Speed does affect how you play the game quite a bit, because this game is about taking risks, right? I have to make judgments based off my weapons. I have to make judgments based off my stack, my enemy stack, where the enemies are, where I'm hearing them, where they're headed, how the item timings work. These all take into effect with the kind of risks I can take. And if I know if I'm good with my movement, I can make ballsier plays and get away with it. Because speed gets you to places faster. If I wanted to contest for Mega, I obviously need the speed to get there from where I'm standing, right? And so it's key to learn the movement properly. And so it's also key that if you want to get really good at this game, you also want to practice movement on your own, and there are plenty of ways to do that. First one is to buy the game and play in customs, right? That's currently how it works right now. I'm sure you could probably practice it a bit in the tutorial levels, just giving yourself a little spot to practice in without any interference with anybody else. But you could also practice Quake Live or Quake 3D Frag. Those are great ways to do it. There are plenty of great ways to practice strafe jumping. There are maps designed for it in other Quake games, and I promise you the same physics applies. It's still pretty much the same thing. I mean, sure, the base speed's slightly different, but the same concept applies. You can strafe jump like this. You can start learning how to race around the map.
Quad damage.
And how there's different techniques involved. Like with just side strafe. I bet most of you didn't know this, but you can just side strafe and get the hang of it as well. It's the exact same concept. You can even do it just plus forward. I'm not particularly good at it, but it's possible. And that same is true for doing it backwards. Of course, I don't know where the fuck I'm going, but I'm doing it right now. It's the same concept. Now, this is only for default Quake movement, also known as VQ3, standing for Vanilla Quake 3. This is existent for every single character in the game besides Anarchy and Zorlag. And you'll notice that with those two characters, they have a totally different physics. Now, of course, there are the characters that have their own little movement nick, or whatever you want to call it, I guess. I don't know what to call it. Like Slash's crouch slide, she's still VQ3 in every sense of the word, but she can just crouch slide. With Nyx, she can do an additional jump off the wall. Doom can do a double jump, etc. Right, and then there's also adjusted values for base speed, and there's also adjusted values for acceleration. Heavy characters tend to have a little bit more acceleration, but lower base speed. Lighter characters are the complete opposite. Visor, in particular, he has medium base speed, 310, but he has the best acceleration in the game, which is why he's also my favorite character in the current build, because I love whoring out that acceleration, getting speed. He speeds everything in this game. As you can kind of see here, you just kind of get the gist of it. Now, to kind of get into this whole strafe jumping shenanigan, I want to like sort of introduce a couple different things first. If I hold forward, I cap it at 310 almost immediately. If I go back, I cap it at 310. If I go left strafe, I cap it at 310. If I go right strafe, I cap it at 310. Now, if I hold forward and just start turning, I start gaining speed. Now if I just kind of like wiggle it to the side, it kind of fluctuates very quickly. If I do it smoothly, it's a bit more consistent. And here's one thing that players need to know when it comes to strafe jumping. Smooth mouse movement, excuse me, is vital. If you do not have smooth mouse movement, like godlike LG tracking skills, you're not going to move well in Quake, right? I notice a lot of players are new, they're just like kind of, you know, shaking their mouse everywhere like they're on meth or something. I don't even know. Like, you have to have it smooth. Snap smooth. Snap smooth. That's how it works. You want to be able to have smooth mouse movement. Right, that's the key to strafe jump. Now the next thing, once you get past the whole idea that if you turn and just hold a single key, you gain speed, that goes beyond your normal speed cap. Now it kind of gets limited, right? There's only so much you can gain, and this is only while you're turning, right? You only get that extra speed while turning. Okay, if I'm just holding forward, or if I just kind of keep turning and then stop turning, it goes back to 310. So turning, it's the act of turning that increases speed. It's not that you just move your mouse to another spot. It's the act of turning. That's what increases speed in this game. Now, the next thing is if I go to 310 and just let go and hold spacebar, I maintain my speed. Momentum is maintained. Velocity is maintained simply by jumping. Now, if you're thinking this right, you combine those two together. Turning in this, the act of turning in this game increases your speed, and the act of jumping in this game maintains your speed. Like, you won't decrease it. That means that extra speed I gained while jumping is maintained and increased. So I won't have to worry about losing it because I'm jumping, and the act of turning increases my speed. So some people start strafe jumping and they'll do like this and then stop moving their mouse, and then if they're jumping, then they're maintaining their speed, right? If I'm moving my mouse, it's going up. It's the act of moving your mouse. So those are the two basic things. Being able to move your mouse across the screen slowly and smoothly is the best way to gain speed. As you notice, if I do it like really quickly, right, I actually lose speed. If I do it very slowly, I mean, it kind of goes above 310, but not by much. But if I do it at the right pace, it goes up to 360. I want to be able to move it at the right pace constantly, right? A certain amount of speed when it comes to moving your mouse, right? And it has to be very consistent. The velocity has to be consistent, right? You can't just wiggle it, because it fluctuates. It fluctuates too much, it's inconsistent. You want to be able to raise it to the highest number as possible and maintain it that way. So when you watch defraggers, you'll notice another thing. When I adjust right and left, they'll kind of zip their mouse to the side. One thing with strafe jumping, especially with VQ3 movement, is it's really hard to explain. I like to call it a threshold. I don't know what anyone else calls it, but there was a tutorial that I watched. I think he was playing Reflex Arena, and you'll notice the guy had like a little green square on his screen, and you notice that it, depending on how fast he was moving or what keys he was pressing, it was on a certain spot on his screen. So how normal strafe jumping works, right? Forward and left, and then moving slightly to the left with your mouse, you'll increase speed, right? And then you would alternate because you turn a little bit in the air, so you'd have to compensate, right? That's just normal strafe jumping, which is the most recommended way because it is the easiest way to do it. If you do forward and left, the threshold on your screen would be about, I don't know, a few degrees off from the center if you're starting to jump. So if I'm going forward, if I'm looking this way and I'm trying to go this way, and then I do forward left and then start strafe jumping, my threshold will be around here, roughly. And once I reach that and I'm starting to push against it, it pushes the threshold off to the side. And the faster I go, the further off from the center of the screen it is. So you notice when you're watching movement videos or whatever, it's further off to the side that you look, right? You'll notice that when defraggers, or when, you know, you're watching those videos of people going like 1,000 million miles per hour in the game on some random map in Quake 3, you'll notice that when they're going slow, they're kind of zipping their mouse side to side, but not too far. But if they're going really fast, they're doing like shit like this, right? It's like they're zipping it way far off to the side. That's because they've built up enough speeds that that threshold has reached that area, because the faster I move, the further off to the side of the screen it goes. The same concept applies for just side strafing, or just plus forward strafing, right? Kind of hard to really explain, but it's like you're constantly pushing the threshold with your mouse, and as it's moving to the side, you have to kind of keep pushing it to gain speed, because you'll notice that if I'm going at like 1000 UPS and my mouse is only like 10 degrees off from the center, and I'm doing the normal strafe jumping technique, forward and strafe buttons, I won't gain speed anymore, and I have to move it way further off to the side and then move it slowly to get it to start moving faster. So there's a certain complexity to it that you'd have to really understand in order to really understand strafe jumping, right? Most tutorials is like, okay, just kind of like move forward and left and then move your mouse to the side, and then the people who aren't that great at strafe jumping, they'll do something like this. They'll just do some wavy shit like this, like they don't even snap their mouse, right? Defraggers always snap their mouse as soon as they switch their strafe key, because they want to keep pushing that threshold. Right, so if I do the wavy motion all the way to the end here, I go up to about 700. Let me go back. So if I do the wavy strafe jump, let's try that again actually. So I just do the wavy shit. I go just below 700, and if I just go back real quick, and then try to do it properly. If I do like the snap motion, I get a bit higher. It's because I'm spending more time at the threshold, right? As soon as I alternate, the threshold goes over here, so I want to move my mouse there as quickly as possible and then start pushing it slowly. So it's kind of weird. Like I said, there are other tutorials online. There's one that was one for Reflex Arena, and it showed a little green box. Forgot the YouTuber or whatever, but if you watch it, you can kind of get what I mean. Like, you have to constantly shift your mouse over to it and then slowly push it to the side, right? That's the concept anyway. So you see a lot of people who are really good at this movement, right? They'll just kind of like snap it. Now there is auto jump in this game, so if you really don't want to, like, you know, press it at the right time, you can auto jump. Just know that it hinders your acceleration a bit more. You'll notice that when I just tap it right before I land, I get better speed out of it. So you know some basic concepts now, that by jumping you maintain your speed, and by the act of turning your mouse, like moving your mouse to the side, is what gives you speed. And by combining those two, you essentially create what's called strafe jumping. And there are multiple ways to do this, with, say, just side strafing, right? And you can mix the two. Like, sometimes you'll notice defraggers, to prevent a lot of mouse movement, they'll do something like this, right? I'm not used to it, to be honest, but they'll do something like this, because the threshold is so close that they barely have to move their mouse, and it's more efficient. So, like, if you watch the Defrag World Cup 2017, some people strafe jump like this because the thresholds are so close to each other, right? They'll do that technique. It's a really good technique to, like, gain speed, because you're spending more time on the threshold, right? Versus whipping it off to the side. Like, you're spending time doing that quick motion, right? Instead of just kind of doing it like this. And of course, just forward strafe, you can even do it with just the back button even. You can pretty much do it anyway. I mean, I'd probably suck balls at it, but look, I'm past 500 UPS now just by holding back, right? So there are a lot of strafe jumping techniques that you should take note of, and how the physics works. How I got pretty good at strafe jumping is, there's the Quake Live training arena, right? So if you have Quake Live, right, at one point it was free, but now you'd have to buy it, which kind of sucks in my opinion. But it has a training course, right? There's just one for normal strafe jumping, one for rocket jumping. If you do the strafe jumping one, levels 1 through 3, you do that with normal strafe jumping, and then you do it with just side strafe jumping, and then you do it with just plus forward, and then you do it backwards, right? You do it in every single technique possible. It really strengthens your ability to strafe jump in this game because you're kind of understanding the physics, and it's a really good way to learn it. And then you just become used to it, quite literally, right? And you know when to jump, how to jump, stuff like that. Now another technique I like to use. Strafe jumping is good for getting speed and all, but one weakness is that you barely have the ability to turn. So if I come around this corner, I kind of have to like slow down a bit, right? It's like, oh, I can't turn that sharp when I'm strafe jumping really fast. So one way to do it is to say I'm approaching it really fast. I fucked up here. There we go. So if I'm getting a lot of speed here, and I want to be able to... So what do you notice I did here? Is I slowed down, of course, like I was slowing down, but I managed to keep above 400 UPS at all times. In fact, I was around 500 average coming around this corner. And you might ask, how is that possible? Like, you can't, like, simply turn, and if you stop, you lose all your speed, right? Well, not technically, no. Right? If you notice here, right, jumping is what maintains your speed. Now, if I spend time on the ground, I drastically reduce it, but it's not instant. Notice how when I hold forward, there's a little bit of time that goes into accelerating to that position, and then when I let go, it goes down at a certain rate. Like, if I let go, there's a little bit of acceleration that occurs where there's a little bit of time duration that goes between me going from 310 to 0. So it's not instant stop moving. You kind of slow down for a brief moment there. So if I'm going at 1000 UPS, I would slow down a bit. Notice how it goes down really quickly. Now the key here is jumping maintains your speed, but if I timed it so that I landed on the ground for a split second where it reduced my speed enough so I can adjust where I'm going, I can lose some speed, but then kind of maintain it. So here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going at 600, and then right here, what happened is, for a split second I was on the ground without jumping, and I took that time to really quickly readjust and jump again, so I didn't go below 400 UPS. I managed to maintain some of my speed coming around the corner, and that's a really good technique to have. So if I come up here, like staying on the ground for as little time as possible to do that little readjustment really helps, and practicing to go around corners like this, where I went down to 450 instead of 310, really helps. Another thing you can do is if you come like on a glance angle towards a wall, right, it won't necessarily stop your speed. It'll slow you down a little bit, sure, but it'll kind of redirect you. Also be aware of corners like that. That's really frustrating. I really don't like bridge to rail on this map either. Kind of sucks. But yeah, that's kind of how strafe jumping works. There's a lot of complexities to it, and a lot of things to know. Like I said, you probably haven't seen someone do this before, right? You know, the just holding forward and then building speed somehow, right? There are a lot of techniques that go into that. At least for VQ3 movement, you won't be able to do this on CPM. CPM is totally different, which is Anarchy and Sarlag. Now, next thing is rocket jumping. Rocket jumping is surprisingly easy in this game. Like, I come from TF2, and you need to, like, not only just press spacebar or jump, I suppose, and then fire your rocket at the same time. You also need to crouch. And if you got really advanced, you time crouch right before you jump to do something called a C-tap. Something to do with, like, your character model going up, but there's a little brief time with crouching and actually losing speed, so you'd actually make your rocket jump go further, stuff like that. It's like really complex shit. In this game, it's just jump and fire, and that's it. And it's not really that difficult, like, especially with VQ3, because you don't have to worry about, like, you're not going to have a lot of air control anyway. So the most you can do after a rocket jump is to kind of strafe jump in the air, like do the motion where I can gain speed still while I'm going up, and then maintain it as soon as I land on the ground by jumping. Right, remember, jumping maintains your speed, the act of turning gives you speed. Combining those two gives you strafe jumping. Right, so when I'm turning my mouse in midair, even if I'm not jumping, I'm gaining speed. Yeah, like, because I'm being in the air, right? I don't slow down. I'm a projectile, but because I can increase my speed by turning, right, while holding a key, it gives me speed. Right. So rocket jumping's quite simple. Basically, you just press jump and fire at the same time, and you go really high. Like I can jump up here if I wanted to. Now it is at the cost of health and armor. The nice thing is everyone starts with Ranger, and Ranger has less self-damage with rocket jumping. So say you're at the armor here, right? Maybe you're dueling and you're at the armor. A very common play is to rocket jump up here and then kind of straight jump and then rail whoever is at Mega or whatever, something like that. You can do that, right? With Ranger, he takes, I think, 25% less damage with that, which is really useful if you know what you're doing. Now, the same thing stands true for any projectile in the game. So, I can tribal jump as well, like, you can kind of do that, like, do kind of a climb like that. I mean, I prefer not to, I'm not a big fan of the tribal, but there's also nailgun climbing, or plasma in this case is what I'm using. I really haven't gotten used to it yet. Like Quake Live or Quake 3, you just kind of hold in the same spot and you keep climbing. And this, it's like, you have to kind of move it, from my experience, because it's just not the same thing. If I just hold it here, I kind of like lose track of it, I guess. But like if I move my mouse slowly up, I guess I can get up to bridge. That, and there's also this little neat trick here, where you can jump to the next ledge, which is a little plasma jump. Yes, plasma gun does have a little bit of splash damage. Pretty much anything with splash damage in this game you can use to alter your acceleration, essentially. And rocket jumping is the most popular way to do it. Now, the only way to rocket jump isn't just at the ground, right? What you can do is if you want to get up to like a reachable ledge that's not that high, you can jump a little bit first and then jump, so that you take less damage, but you don't go as high, right? So it's kind of like a little bit of a trade-off. Another thing you can do, jump off a wall even. You could also use it to gain speed like this. Right. I'm okay at it. Nothing special though. Yeah, see, I'm kind of trash. But yeah. You can use it to gain speed. It's good to practice rocket jumps. Right, like this. Though always note that it does take some of your health and armor away. There are better tutorials online for rocket jumping, but it's a fairly simple thing, right? The splash damage, or not the splash damage, but like the splash from the rocket propels you, and you use that to your advantage. That's basically the whole idea of it. So it's basically about angling your rockets. If I want to jump up right higher, I want to angle it lower. If I want to shoot myself towards the ground, aim down. Now if I jump right after, I go straight into strafe jumping essentially at like 800 UPS. And that was a fuck up there. And now I'm out of rocket ammo. You can even do the same thing with plasma gun. To much lesser extent though, and it's much more difficult in this game because a lot of the walls are bumpy. But if you notice a lot of Quake Live or Quake 3 defrag videos, people will often use the nail gun, and they can just kind of spam at the wall and hug it for a while to gain a lot of speed. Right.
Dominating. Quad damage.
So that's another thing. Next, what I want to show, just briefly, CPM movement.
Get out of my
I know the
space!
time limit for my TDM is about to go up, but I might as well get into it really quick. Notice how, even if I'm holding forward, right, I turn like immediately, right? So I can't do just the plus forward strafe jumping technique with CPM. I can do it with this, with just forward and left. I can do that, but with just forward, I just go into air control mode essentially. So there's a lot of complexities to that. I'm not particularly great with it, in my opinion. Like I've seen some defraggers and they're kind of nuts with CPM movement. Like I got the hang of it, right? right? Air control, I mean, it's a thing. And it's also really fun to do as well, because it's actually pretty easy to get used to it. I don't think CPM movement's any particularly hard, so I suppose it's that. So you just kind of run around the map like this with air control. Yeah, but I don't have time to show it properly in this because of the time limit. It's just a thing, I guess.
Sit up, baby. Enemy team wins.
Though the thing with CPM, the difference with CPM and VQ3 is that you get more air control, as I've shown before. You can turn around corners quickly, and that makes it really good because of the fact that you won't have to worry about slowing down around tight corners. Like I showed earlier, you have to sacrifice speed in order to move around corners quickly. In normal Quake physics. With CPM, you just have air control. And there are a lot of ways to do it. You can just use the 80-80 strafe, which is a more popular way because you do gain speed with it, or you can just do it with W or forward, but you won't gain speed with it. Now, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to do that in this game because Anarchy speed cap is 680 along with Sorlag. Because CPM characters are so good and they can maintain their speed so easily, they have a speed cap. Whereas all the other characters are like 2000, which is basically a speed that's unreachable. Or if it is reachable, which I think it is, with the maps that we have, it's kind of pointless. But CPM, it's forced to 680 because of how easy it is to maintain your speed, whereas with Vanilla Quake 3 movement, you can only keep gaining speed if you have like a straightaway. Like if as soon as there's a tight turn, or even a somewhat tight turn, like the faster you go, the less you can really turn, you won't be able to maintain that speed. You'll run into a wall, whereas with CPM you can just use air control. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's quite different. I wouldn't say I'm like super good with it. Like I said, I've seen some crazy fucking defraggers out there, and they're just absolute gods of the movement. Like they can do a million different things with it. But to be effective with it, it's very easy. I guess you could say it's technically a really low skill floor, but a really high skill ceiling type of movement. So I'm just gonna hop into another custom, and I'm gonna load up a map that's a little bit better for CPM. I think Ruins of Sarnath is a great example. And I'll just kind of switch up my characters and kind of show what it's all about. I'm not going to get into it as deep with the VQ3, right? Because the VQ3 is really important to know in this game. It's like the bread and butter of movement in Quake, essentially. It's just, you need to know it. With CPM, it's a bit altered, but there's only a couple characters with it, and they're not really like, you know, jack of all trade type of characters. Like Anarchy, you're gonna run a lot and find items, like hog the items because your stack is so low, especially with how your overheal goes down a lot faster on that character. And Sorlag is just a fat ass that gets killed by any person with a lightning gun. Like as soon as you run into a lightning gun, you're gonna get bullied around and shit, and you're such a fat target. Like there are a lot more glaring drawbacks with the CPM characters compared to like someone standard and versatile like Ranger and Visor, right, who are much more reliable in every situation, right? Now, you'll notice with Anarchy, his base speed's 320. That's because he's a light character. At least in the current patch, that's how he works. And the same stands true if I just use all the different keys. And just like before, you'll notice that when I just hold forward and start turning, I gain more speed. I go beyond my speed cap if I'm turning at a certain rate. But as soon as I stop turning, it goes back to 320. And if I'm turning too quickly, it actually goes down. Right, now you'll notice that I can kind of sacrifice going a bit faster with CPM. I think it's just because that's how the physics kind of works. Like that's just how it's designed in the game, right? I actually kind of know, like especially with some of the patches that they had with the CPM characters, that the CPM actually felt different than what it originally was in the Quake 3 mod. So it could change from update to update. Like they change all sorts of values and shit, and I don't want to get into that because I don't know what it's about. But it's subject to change. The one general rule and I also missed this with Vanilla Quake 3, is the circle jumping mechanic, right? You notice how you gain speed by turning? Well, you want to like maximize that before you jump, so you can like get to the highest UPS after one jump, units per second, which is the speedometer displayed on screen. And so with Vanilla Quake 3, it's usually like a 90-degree movement. So you'll do something like this. With CPM, it's more like you're doing a U. And there are other tutorials that kind of explain it better, but the whole concept is to really maximize that speed you get from turning while just on the ground, and then turning it into a jump. And then gain speed as quick as possible, which is quite important in this game, right? You don't want to just kind of start jumping like this, right? You want to be able to maximize that movement from just turning before you jump. With CPM characters, it's a U. Like, you even notice that briefly, I go above 400 UPS just by doing a U, right? Whereas with Vanilla Quake 3, like Visor, you want to do more of a 90-degree turn, right? But at the end of the day, it's all about maximizing that speed.
I see.
Now you notice I'm capped out at 816, that's only with the ability, but without it I'm at 620. No, I think it was 680 actually. Let me just test it out real quick. Yeah, it's 680. So you notice that CPM characters have speed caps. This is purely for game balance, right? Whereas with pretty much every other character, they don't really cap at all. Unless you want to say it caps at 2000, but no one's going to reach that speed. So that's one thing to note. So, right, you can do all sorts of different ways to do air control. You'll notice that with holding just forward, for some reason it doesn't give you speed. That's just with how CPM works, right? But if you're at 680, this won't really matter because you're already at the speed cap. Whereas if you're using AD and AD, you go up to 680.
Juice it up, baby.
And I just increased my speed cap to 816 briefly with Anarchy's ability, which is kind of neat. Alright, enough running around. So that's one other thing to note. Much like the normal strafe jumping technique, which is forward and then strafe, or any one of the strafe keys, it's pretty much the same deal with CPM with that regard. Like, you can still just do the normal strafe jumping and barely have any air control, and then immediately just kind of transition. Transitioning is a skill in this specific type of movement, because if I'm strafe jumping and then immediately move to like right, like holding 80 and 80, right, I actually lose speed. So let's say I go up to 680, right, so let's pick a straightaway. So I go up to like a certain amount and then I just hold left, right, my speed just goes down immediately. Right, you notice if I don't even move my mouse, it kind of just changes my movement and actually slows me down. I'll try to demonstrate as much as I can. Yeah. A lot of people recommend that you just use the 80-80, but sometimes it's not the case, right? Because of precisely that reason. It's actually faster to gain movement by using the normal strafe jumping technique and then switching to this once you have most of that speed, which is really important to know, because if you just start like this, it takes a long time to gain that movement. Like, see how I'm so sluggish? It takes me forever to get to 680, and then if I just use strafe jumping, I get to it a lot faster. Right, so I'm just gonna do this. Oh, look at that, I'm at 680 already. Now if I just start doing this and trying to gain speed this way, it takes much longer. Right, and what makes CPM characters so good is their acceleration. Like, their ability to go to the speed cap so quickly is so crucial in this game. So you want to be able to actually strafe jump a little bit, and then being able to transition to one of the strafe jumping techniques. Now, I'm still not used to holding forward, so I'm just used to like going back to 80-80, like most people. But I notice when you strafe jump, you just have to look like where you're going, and then you can adjust from there, right? Like, you gotta adjust your mouse all the time with this kind of stuff. So right here, I strafe jump, and now I'm like at 680 pretty quickly. If I just kind of do this, it takes me forever to gain that speed. Like, I'm gaining speed, but not nearly at the rate as I would be if I just did a circle jump and strafe jump. right? Like there's a little bit of a difference there that's really important. You know, I've been trying to do a sync jump like that on Sarnath for a while now. I just kind of like doing that. Ruins of Sarnath is probably my favorite map to practice strafe jumping on and CPM movement because of just how amazing it is. Like I said, you can just kind of do this. Whee! Ah, fuck. I messed up. But yeah, it's just fun. Just kind of run around like this. Yeah, and it kind of teaches you which routes are good to take on certain like movement and stuff like that. And you just kind of have fun with it. It's a really good way to practice movement is to play Runes of Sarnath. Especially if you're interested in playing characters like Anarchy. Ow. But yeah. That's one way to go about it. There's not too much to add about CPM, but like I said, basically the big difference is air control and speed cap and acceleration. And just being able to alternate between normal strafe jumping like this and then going back to air control mode essentially is, I guess, is the best way for me to call it. I wouldn't consider myself great at CPM movement. Like I've seen defraggers that are just godly at it and they know everything about it. For me, it's just gain that speed, go into air control mode, you're set. You can even use the ability to gain some more speed. And then, of course, rocket jump. Look at my beautiful 1100 UPS. Oh, I did something there, but crap.
Incoming quad.
Yeah, but not too much to add. I'm just kind of rambling on here. I'm not even going to edit this. I'm just kind of upload this as a tip video. Like, it's not... I wouldn't want to make this as like a video to teach players how to strafe jump. Like, I want players to kind of explore that for themselves, but if they want to really learn like some extra things that are really important about strafe jumping or, you know, stuff like that, some things to note, I guess this is what this video is for, right? And just be kind of showing off and be looking at the keys and see what I do with my mouse and what keys I hold while I'm doing these things, right? It's mainly to just kind of take note and then the little few tips I like to add. Yeah, you notice that when I do like, once I get to the speed cap, I tend to just hold it down, like hold the spacebar down, it's because I want to focus more on doing these flick shots. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Teleporters actually increase your speed a little bit, which is kind of weird. So even if you're at your speed cap on Anarchy or Sorlag, or Slash also has a speed cap. She's VQ3, but she has crouch slide. And therefore she has a speed cap, I guess, because crouch slide is also really good. Granted, it's hard as balls to use it. I'm not even going to go into Slash because she's so hard. Like, I'm terrible with Slash. I'd recommend just watching another tutorial for Slash's movement. Like, there are plenty of good ones out there. Or any Quake 4 movement tutorial. I'm pretty sure it's not the same with Quake 4, but that's where it's derived from. Like, Slash's movement. But I'm a little more familiar with this. And right there, I was just moving at the speed of a rocket, which is 1100 UPS. It's kind of neat. Outspeeding the rocket, boys. Okay, I think I'm gonna call it here. I had enough fun just jumping around. But yeah, I guess this is a little bit of a tip video for those who are interested in kind of learning more about it and kind of getting the gist of it, because there's a difference between, you know, seeing someone do it and then trying to copy it and then understanding what it is. And I feel like that's the goal of this video, to get players who are learning it to really understand it. and then you'll get good really fast. Unless, of course, you need to develop those motor skills. Like me, I did a lot of TF2 rocket jumping. This came easy for me. For other players, I don't know, if you played a lot of Overwatch, right, you're used to just holding forward, or maybe if you're play Call of Duty, you hold, like, left shift to fucking sprint. Like, that's not the same thing here. You actually gotta, like, press a lot of keys and shit
I see.
to get used to it.
Stars.
But yeah, that's pretty much what it is. So, I guess that'll be the video. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped. I know it's kind of cluttery and messy and it's not scripted. I'm just rambling. But I just wanted to get a few things out there and also test out my new mic because I bought one. My older one was falling apart and it was also echoing. So I guess there's a lot of good things to come out of it. Thanks for watching.